it's not been in a diary for whatever reason.
I'll do something.
Lovely, thank you very much. All right then. In that case, I've got the little live icon up in the top left of my screen. Well, are we good to start?
Good to go.
We're good to go. Excellent. In that case, welcome everyone to this virtual meeting of the Joint Staff Consultative Committee, which is being conducted with members and officers and representatives at various locations, communicating via audio, video and online. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer, Louis Mutter, to explain how proceedings will work and to confirm that members and officers can all be heard. I don't see Louis though, Will.
No, it's me.
It is you. Can we
Don't worry about it. Also,
in my script in future?
Councillor Strong has just joined us as well, so that's perfect timing. Right. When I call your name, please can you indicate your attendance to confirm that the required members and officers are present and can hear and be heard. Councillor Dennis Harburg.
Yep.
Councillor Bakar.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Strong. Oh, Councillor Strong, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I was on mute. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hone.
Yes, present, correct.
Councillor Plater.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've got Keith Fitzpatrick Matthews. Keith, you're muted at the moment. Can't hear you. Oh no, I can't hear you at all. Oh, that's better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ah, excellent. I just plugged it into a different USB port. Anyway, I'm here.
Thank you.
Eventually.
Christina Core.
Here, thank you.
Thank you. And our officers, Ian Cooper.
Yes, I'm here.
Rebecca Webb.
Yes, good morning.
And Helen Violet.
Yes, good morning.
Thank you. This meeting is being audio and video recorded and live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel. Members may request to speak using the raise hand function, and the same function will be used to vote. Are there any questions before we start? No, thank you very much. I'll now hand over to the chair to continue with the meeting.
Lovely, thank you very much, Will. Right, so first item is apologies for absence. I had no apologies as of yesterday. Have any been received? I don't think so. Excellent. Good. In that case, item 2, the minutes of the 9th of March meeting. Now, we've obviously had an election in between times, and I think some of the officer representations changed a little bit as well. But those that were present at that last meeting, are you happy that those are minutes are a true record of it? I can see Terry shaking his head.
Yeah, just one minor point, which you may or may not agree with, but if you go to number 28, information note HR update, we have a string of burger dots down there, and the last burger dot says Labour turnover is at a high. I suggest it should be staff turnover is at a high, because it may give the impression that it's a political party on there rather than staff.
I think I see the linguistic point. I wouldn't necessarily say it was being political. I think it's just more a case of we refer to staff turnover. It's just cleaner language, isn't it?
Well, it is, but Labour has a different meaning when it comes to politics, doesn't it?
Anyway, we're going to keep politics away from today because it's not that space. But thank you for pointing
I
that out.
didn't put the word Labour in there. Somebody else did. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Terry. So I'll let Will take care of that one. Were there any other comments on the minutes from March? So are we happy, colleagues, to accept those as a true and accurate record of that meeting?
Happy to accept.
Yeah, okie dokie. Lovely, thank you very much. Let me jump back to the right page. There we go. Okay, excuse me. Item number 3 is Chair's announcements. Okay, this meeting, as I think Will said, is being audio recorded. The audio recordings will be available to view on ModGov and the film recording via the North Herts Council YouTube channel. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest. I can't see that there will be too many of them here, but if there is one, please make sure that you make a declaration of interest before an item. and the detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the Chair's announcements on the full agenda report pack. So item number 4 is the Staff Consultation Forum, and we've received the minutes of the consultation forums for March, April and May. I've got a note here that Ian Cooper is going to present. I'm going to assume that everybody has read these documents through. So Ian, if you want to just give us any sort of key highlights and summary points that we might like to discuss.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll do a very brief introduction. Obviously, welcome any questions or comments. Obviously, a lot of detail there in terms of a usual variety of topics that are covered at these meetings. As you'll see from the minutes of those meetings, we have introduced now having green updates. So each time we have an update around what's going on our green agenda for the Staff Consultation Forum, just sort of highlight what's been going on and what future actions are. You'll see in there, in that period, we've had Staff Recognition Awards, which was very successful, had lots of good nominations and chose some very worthy winners as a result of that. And the last bit I was just going to quickly highlight was various discussions around the Ukraine schemes in terms of support and what the council is doing in relation to that. The role of the council has changed a little bit over that period. So initially we were going to be making the payments to those sponsoring under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. That's still being taken on by the county council. But in terms of the support that our teams are providing in relation to environmental health and housing checks, that's been happening. And I believe we're on top of those at the moment in terms of those happening. So yeah, that was my introduction. But yeah, happy for any questions.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Ian on those 3 sets of minutes that we've had from the group? Wow. Okay. I think I could potentially construct one. So obviously we're seeing a lot of staff expressing concern or sort of worry about returning to the office and how the recovery from COVID is going to impact on them. I can see that there are responses in there, and there's particular lines being taken in respect of childcare commitments and where this may clash with work, etc. Have we got good support that is empathetic in place to support our staff as they're transitioning from working how we had to work during COVID back to what people might refer to as business as usual or work pre-COVID?
I would say we have, and we're still in a situation where we're not forcing anyone back into the office. So where people can do their job from home, we are still allowing that. So we're still sort of gently encouraging people where they can to go into the office and to sort of see what it's like. But there's no pressure at all to go into the office at the moment. We are sort of slowly moving to a situation where we're going to encourage it more and more on the basis we do see benefits of it, spending some time in the office, particularly as sort of discussion between work colleagues on a more kind of informal basis. So whilst we're not setting any numbers around that, sort of loosely and sort of manager's head, it's sort of around 1 to 2 days a week, potentially people going into the office. Some go more if they want to, some will go less. We do have people who just work exclusively from home and have done for many, many years, and they also continue to do that. We also have staff that have to work out and about in various locations because of the role they do. In terms of HR support, I think we've been very positive in terms of the support we've been providing to people, both in the HR team and the employee advice programme that's available to everyone. I think we'll have to gently move back towards some sort of more standard work practices, particularly around childcare. I think we'll sort of start to say, look, you can't really be looking after children doing your day job on a regular basis. Yes, exceptionally, you may be able to have a younger child in the house, but we do have to sort of get away from the assumption that you can have a child in the house, be looking after them. So yeah, some bits we need to sort of slowly move towards back towards the old normal in terms of what they're going on, but I think we can do that in a supportive way.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions for Ian on these papers? No? Okay, great. In that case, the recommendation is that we note the report, well, to note the minutes rather. I'm assuming that we're happy to note that and move on to the next item, which is the HR update that Rebecca's going to present.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take the opportunity just to run through some key points from the report. The first section, 3.2, looks at the people recovery plan. As Ian said, we're getting a gradual return to the office. It is very important to our employees. Flexibility is very important to our employees. And we are looking at creating some principles for staff and some guidance for managers to really support that return to work and what it might look like in practice for different service areas. Moving on to 3.3, which is recruitment. In line with national trends, we are seeing higher staff turnover, and this is reflected in the vacancies advertised at the council. We've had several successful appointments, including 2 apprentices and 1 Kickstart trainee being recruited to permanent roles. Although this isn't unusual, there have been other examples of this. It's such a positive outcome, it feels that it's always worth highlighting. And we've also started a Recruitment Refresh project, which will review each stream of the recruitment process with an aim to modernising and improving it. We're looking at ensuring that this project then supports effective attraction of talent. Moving to 3.6, which is our employee benefits, we have started a review of our staff benefits, and we are surveying staff for their views and carrying out research into available options. Given local government pay and the current economic situation, it really is more important than ever that our reward package plays its part in recruitment and retention for staff. Another highlight would be the mental health and wellbeing, which Ian has just touched on. It continues to be a focus for the HR team. We've launched some Mind e-learning, a module for staff and a module for managers, and that focuses on supporting mental health. Headspace is well used. We have 102 North Herts users spending 18,000 minutes on the app, so that's really being put to good use. And we continue to provide support and information, signposting and giving reminders to staff through all communication channels. 3.10 covers our inclusion group activity, and they continue to meet on a quarterly basis. In March, they talked about experiences relating to religion. The group really provides an open and safe space for experiences to be shared. And we've seen some really helpful discussions and feedback through that group. And there's an example in the information note about raising awareness. And even though these are small changes to the way we communicate and the things that we say to staff, it really helps us further develop our inclusive approach. And then finally, 3.11 shows our absence data. So you'll see that the COVID absences have started to reduce, and that's following the national trends, but short-term absence overall has increased. It's likely to be related to increased social activity and that circulation of minor infections, but it continues to be monitored. And we continue to give advice and support to managers dealing with any absence, but certainly any kind of pockets of high absence levels in the organisation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I will start actually. I note that you glossed over the pay bargaining part of the report. Obviously 2021 dragged on for a very long time for reasons that I don't think we need to go into in this space, but that had knock-on consequences for other decisions that we needed to make as well. Do we expect 2022's negotiations to be potentially as difficult given where we are with our finances, the finances nationwide in local government, and the cost of living and unions working really hard to make sure that working people get a fair deal?
Yes, I do think it will be difficult. Unfortunately, we are taking part in the regional pay briefings, so we continue to be a part of that. There is a meeting at the end of this month, and we are expecting the union's claim to come in any point now. I imagine that what employers can afford and what unions want will be poles apart. So there is an awful lot of work to be done. And obviously everybody will be keen to get a pay deal as soon as possible. So we'll be doing our part in that. But obviously we're tied to the regional decision.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Rebecca on the HR report? Yes, Tom.
Yeah, just again to touch on the people recovery plan. So there's the new ways of working and guidance for managers and staff for the working practices. Are those guidances effectively going to be applied on an individual basis? Because obviously the flexibility of individual staff members will be different as to who's coming into the office and when and where, and how will that document work with the flexibility that individual staff members have in their jobs?
So we're still working on the document itself. The principles are being developed. We are fully, I explained that we understand that our staff feel that flexibility is very important, and that's really key to us. And I know that leadership team and certainly HR fully support that flexibility. So we will have principles and there will be guidance for managers. The service manager will need to make decisions based on their service needs and individual needs. So of course the individual needs need to be taken into account. One part of the document does cover that exact item, so it will be something that we take into account. I think Ian might have something to add, unless I've already covered it. Okay.
I think Ian had his hand up and then it went down again, and I think Claire had a hand up and it went down as well, but I think I'll jump to Ian first and then I'll take Raj afterwards.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to add that the document will have 4 main groups of staff, and those 4 groups will be those that are always working at home at one end, those that are always in the office at the opposite end. In between, you've got those that are working out and about, so those that are doing mileage around the district to do sort of various roles, and then those hybrid workers who will come into the office and work at home and go about and about. And even within those 4 groups, there'll be flexibility within those groups as well. There's no hard and fast rules in any of it, but it's just giving that kind of guidance to employees and managers around what to kind of expect. So to fully, yeah, based on what your question you asked, yeah, fully going to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you, Ian. Raj.
Just touching on the equality and sorry, my throat's kind of a bit funny. Equality and diversity and inclusion. The inclusion group that you mentioned, is that sort of part of a wider diversity inclusion sort of strategy that you've got in place? So obviously religion's not just one thing affecting staff, there's various things. So, you know, do you hold other forums, and how does that forum kind of look at the moment? Do we have execs, you know, joining those forums, just so, because I think it's really important that, you know, the leadership teams are aware of what's going on and they're also raising their awareness about these kind of things. So just yeah, a little bit more information really about that.
Okay, thank you. So the inclusion group was born from an initial gender pay gap group, and it was broadened in 2020. So yes, absolutely, they talk about all different protected characteristics, but also just the general inclusion, which is part of our values. So as they've been running for about 18 months, and they meet every quarter, and they have taken a characteristic or a couple of characteristics each time to focus on, and that's been the initial approach for the group, and we've now covered those, and so it's more about honing focus and deciding where we want to go next with the group, and that's what the next meeting will be about. We the idea of the group is that people can come and talk about their experiences. So we get feedback, but we also want that open discussion, and a decision, I believe, was made not to have somebody from leadership team on the group. But what we do, there are a number of HR people within the group, and then we have a conversation with Ian Cooper afterwards, so that we can talk less about the personal experiences, but more about the actions, the direction that we want to take, and anything, if we'd like to take something to leadership team to be discussed, that's how we would start that conversation.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Claire.
Yes, and Rebecca, in your report, you mentioned that you're looking at a recruitment refresh, and you also talked about the reward package. Is that to try and address the fact that the turnover of staff has gone up so dramatically this last year?
The recruitment refresh has been a plan that I've had for a number of years, and this is just the opportunity that we've now got to the chance to be able to do that, but it will address that issue. So it will help to make sure that we are attracting talent. It will help us in making sure that we can fill those hard to recruit to posts, and we do have a couple of pockets of those across the council. So the timing's good from that perspective, but it was an idea that happened and was talked about before this started to happen.
Can I just quick supplementary on that? For all the leavers that you're doing, and assuming you're doing post-exit interviews for reasons for leaving, is there any trending in that, why staff are leaving us to go elsewhere?
There's not a clear pattern. So yes, of course, we have exit interviews and we have exit questionnaires, and those are monitored, but we're not seeing a clear pattern. So there isn't any indication that there's something that's going wrong. And of course, some turnover is good and will be expected, but that will continue to be monitored.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, everyone. So if that's it for questions, again, the recommendation here is to note Rebecca's report, and I think we're happy to do that, having given Rebecca a little bit of scrutiny as well. So thank you very much. Okay, item number 6 is a strategic discussion paper on shaping our future and our values, which Helen is going to present.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I think I'll probably I apologise to Claire Strong, who knows quite a lot about this now. But if I just highlight some of the key points. So the values, our values have recently been refreshed, but initially they were put together in consultation with staff. We workshopped and we went out to staff and put forward proposed values, and we amended these in line with feedback from across the organisation, making sure that we included all our satellite sites as well as staff at council offices. So that came out of a peer review, and prior to that, an Investors in People report that they were not necessarily very clear to staff. So that was a really big focus. So now we have really clear values that are highlighted to staff at every opportunity, and we do a lot of work to make sure that staff understand what the values are and how we expect them to demonstrate them. A couple of other points. So the aims of shaping our future are to develop a high quality, diverse, inclusive and resilient workforce. And I think the resilient point has been a key focus during the pandemic. Clearly, things changed slightly and our focus did change. And those, Rebecca's already highlighted, how much we've done to support our staff to be resilient. And touching on the healthy, creative and productive organisation as well. the IT team are continually looking at new ways that they can support creativity and productivity with our new ways of working. But clearly that will continue to adapt as we change to returning to the office, more hybrid. But ultimately, the aims of shaping our future is to make sure that we have an organisation that can deliver the council's priorities and sort of putting people first, sustainability, and a brighter future. So yeah, that's kind of what we are.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Helen. Does anybody have any questions for Helen on the report or what she said, or queries about what shaping our future looks like and what it is and what it means? Okay, somebody must have something, because this is on the agenda as a strategic discussion item, so I would expect us to have some sort of strategic discussion. There we go, Raj.
Hi. So just with the values, so how is this being communicated with staff overall, and sort of is there sort of training being rolled out for all council staff members? And
yeah, so before they were refreshed, so that they're now down to 5. We did have 6. Prior to that, when we were in the office, they were it was a lot of visual. They were on the walls, they were in the meeting rooms. Now they have been kind of streamlined. We have personal development sessions each month, and one of these is dedicated purely to the values. And this was to allow teams to talk about how the values apply to them in their own teams, in their own service areas, in their own roles. And we are starting to get back to the visual side of things as well. So they will be back on the walls in the meeting spaces in the office.
And sorry, just one more question.
No, fine.
How are the new values being incorporated into sort of the overall recruitment strategy for the council as well?
Okay, so they are, with current staff, they form part of our performance review process. So during your performance review, you discuss the values with your manager and how you have demonstrated them, how you've excelled at them, where you may need to develop in some areas. And as part of the Recruitment Refresh project as well, we'll be looking at bringing the values into more values-based recruitment. We'll be looking at doing that as well, and displaying them sort of, prominently and clearly to potential members of staff as well as current members of staff.
Lovely, thank you very much. Tom.
Thank you very much. I just have a quick question about the last future consideration, encouraging a more diverse range of views about the future of the organisation, and just to ask whether they're effectively in the group that there wasn't a diverse range of views about the future of the organisation, and secondly, what the action is in order to create that discussion so that more diverse views can be heard.
So we now have the inclusion groups, which we we go out to the inclusion group for their take on anything that we're doing, and not so much diverse across the organisation, kind of linear, but also about apprentices. We make sure that we sort of talk to our apprentices about what we do well, what we could potentially improve. So we get views about the organisation from across all levels as well.
Can I come back on that quickly?
Yes.
Just to ask whether contracted staff and staff on fixed term contracts are included in those discussions too.
All our staff, anybody who works with us, for us, is considered a member of staff. Okay. There's no distinction.
Lovely, thank you very much. Ian Cooper has a hand up. Not anymore, he doesn't. And he's on mute.
Sorry, just wanted to add what Helen said. I pressed the button but didn't. So I think initially shaping our future was, we've got a steering group for shaping our future, and that's been very sort of much engagement with councillors in the early stages. We tried to extend it out to staff, but it wasn't working quite as well as it maybe should have done. So now we've got the steering group, but we're also trying to seek views from other groups as well now, and less Shaping Our Future. So linking into the inclusion group, linking into staff consultation forum, and making sure we're kind of gathering those views from all parts of the organisation to make sure we're kind of getting at the whole picture. Because I think it's probably fair to say that the Shaping Our Future steering group was maybe slightly dominated by councillors, which is to be expected because we wanted this sort of councillor viewpoint on board. But yeah, just kind of by different ways to kind of get that message out there, but also get the feedback back in as well.
Good, that's really positive, because I think if it's something that's ultimately for staff and is supposed to be providing support and helping our staff move forward as an inclusive and diverse workforce and delivering for people, then we really need to be involving them a lot more than we were when we were having, I think, sometimes some quite technocratic and very distant conversations in those Shaping the Future project board meetings. I know that we've got a couple of members of staff in this committee and they've been quiet today, so I might be awful and pick on Keith and Christina and just sort of ask you, what are your views on Shaping the Future? Is it working? Do you know much about it? Do you need to see more from it? Anyone can jump in.
Shall I go first?
Go on, Keith. Yeah.
I haven't actually been involved in it. I'm more involved in the diversity and inclusion group. It's clearly something that I do need to know more about. And yeah, it's my fault for not having engaged with it.
Okay, that's fair enough. I trust that you'll engage with it and talk to Ian offline and take some bits forward and run it through the inclusion group as well, so that we can have those cross relationships going and make sure that we are covering everything off from the right angle and nobody's getting left behind. Christina, did you have any strong views?
I think the values are pretty much part of everyday work in any case. I would like to think that certainly most of the people that I work with have got that involvement on a day-to-day basis without even knowing it. But I'm always, as part of the staff consultation forum, always open for discussion.
Yeah, good. No, I think I agree with you. I think the majority of organisations, when they adopt values, do tend to pick the things that are obvious, that make sense, and that we would expect people that are working there already to be doing. And that also helps with them being adopted and embedded in the workforce as well. Right. Tom has still got a hand up. Was that a new hand or is that from before? If it's from before, take it down, please.
No, it is a new hand. It's just a very quick question about whether this group as well can get a look at the action plan as it is, because the document talks about the action plan and it evolving, but it would be good as well to see what the current actions are and how that then evolves over the course of this initiative.
I think that's a fair point from a transparency perspective. Ian, is that something that you'd be able to provide or to circulate to members after this meeting so that everybody knows where we're currently at and we've got a good snapshot?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, lovely. Claire.
Sorry. I wanted to come back, Keith, and ask you a question, saying, because you said that you've not really been involved with the Shaping Your Future. Is that because you're in the museum and sort of more, I say, as a satellite site rather than the corporate HQ?
There is an element of that, but there's also the fact that because we're such a small team here, I find that my time is increasingly used on meetings such as this one, whereas I should be more front-facing and out there with the public. So it is partly the stress on my time that has prevented me from engaging with it. And as I said, I do feel that I need to be more proactive with this.
I have to say, though, in my knowing of you in your role in the museum, you demonstrate most of those on a daily basis anyway, because you are right at the front end, whereas a lot of the staff perhaps are more hidden away, but you are right out there engaging with so many people. and well known for it. So that's
Thank you.
But I was a bit when you said that you'd not sort of engaged with the program, and I was a bit kind of thought, oh, but anyway, I'll leave that with Ian though to gather you up.
Yes, it's on the discussion end of it that I've not engaged. Clearly, with the values, yes, we all do our utmost to follow them as well as we can.
Excellent. Right. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything more that they want to say on shaping our future? Or I think we can possibly hold until after Ian's pinged around the action tracker, and then we could, pick up any bits via correspondence as necessary. Yep. Okay, let me jump back into this one then. Okay, so we have a recommendation to note the report. I think we've noted it, and I think we've had a reasonable discussion around it. And I think that perhaps one piece of feedback for the Shaping Our Future team might be to make sure that you are getting legitimate engagement from staff across the workforce and are listening when they're feeding things in. You have to give them that opportunity to raise their concerns, to express their views about the programme, etc., so we can then factor that in as we move forward with actions. Right, so the last item on the agenda today is future discussion topics. There's a table that's at the end of the agenda pack, which sets out a number of different topics that this group might wish to have as a strategic discussion at future meetings. There's also, for reference, the topics that have previously been looked at in recent history, so that we're not necessarily repeating things so close to having already looked into them. And we've helpfully split the different topics via subject area as well. So you might want to say take two from the same broad subject area because they fit together quite neatly, and have a conversation around that. So I'll open it up to suggestions. Is there anything on this list that people would like to discuss at the next meeting, bearing in mind, horizon scanning and what we might see and need to deal with and support staff with? Or is there something not on this list that you think is critical that we need to think about? Terry?
Yeah, I think recruitment and retention is got to be high on our agenda here somewhere, Chairman. I think, Elizabeth, it's something which, yes, we do see things in the reports that come to us for this meeting, but it's got to be on there, and it's got to be every time, because it is such a big issue, not only for us, as we know, but certainly it's something which could impact on our ability to deliver the services which we're committed to doing. So somewhere in there, we've got to have recruitment and retention.
I hear that. I think that needs to be a regular item, perhaps for Rebecca, to make sure that you're picking up and giving us that, regular focus, because then that should, in theory, also focus the mind of the organisation on plugging the gap and making sure that we really are picking up any possible threads from exit interviews, etc., about why people are leaving. So rather than having that as a big topic, I think that we should have that as something that we see and we think about and we consider at every single meeting, and we make sure that we link that into the staff consultation forum reports as well that come forward if people are saying things in there that are potentially triggering them to wish to career change or to move to the private sector or consultancy or whatever. Okay, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'd like to agree with Councillor Hone and yourself on that. And also just to bring up that two of the resourcing subjects are attracting and rewarding scarce talent, and also supporting young people through apprenticeships and other schemes. And I think as a supplementary to that, I think those two subject areas are very worth being looked at by this committee, especially since the apprenticeship scheme has been incredibly successful, and to look at what we can do to keep that going, keep supporting young people through the apprenticeships at the council, and hopefully bring them onto the workforce once they finish their apprenticeships.
Yep, okay, so I've got a bid for looking at apprenticeships and rewards and recognition at the next meeting of this body. I'll hold on to that and go to Raj.
I think it's fine sort of with the recruitment strategies and things like that, but I think also supporting the current sort of pool of staff that we have as well, and working on well-being strategies and things like that. And I think that kind of overlaps a little bit with menopause at work. I think that's a really sort of big issue at the moment, and obviously we have like quite an aging workforce as well. So I think it's important that I don't want to sound, but what I mean is that we need to support, the more mature staff members that we do have on board, and avoid them going off sick, and also, the current members of staff who are struggling with things like mental health and just, generally due to sort of the uncertain times. I think we need to implement something there as well.
Yes, no, I hear that, and I agree. Actually, when I read this list, that was the one thing that wasn't on there that really, really jumped out at me, because it's such an important conversation. And I think every woman on this call, I think we can all honestly put our hands up and say, we were not taught about menopause at school. You get all of the stuff about periods. I went through it round the office actually the other week and restocked all of the period poverty boxes in the toilets as well. But there's nothing about menopause, what it is, how it impacts you, and that education is something that's lacking. And most workplaces across the country now are finally starting to provide that support to staff internally, run those education programs to support managers and workers. So absolutely, I think that's something that we need to sort of very much major and continue on. And I think, given that well-being issue does overlap with, do people want to stay with us? How do we recognise and reward and provide employee support? We could potentially, include that as a topic within what Tom's already suggested. But I think as well for colleagues on this call, I think it would be beneficial maybe to go away and look at some of the resources that are out there and start pushing them out through the inclusion networks as well, and sort of saying, look, we can have a menopause coffee drop-in or whatever through the women's network, or we can run this training. I'm sure like Unison and various other charities and unions are going to have pre-made packages that we can latch onto and use, so that we are actually giving people the support. And we don't need to wait until we have a strategic discussion at the next meeting of this body before we start doing that sort of thing. I can see Rebecca nodding and writing notes. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Raj, because actually I had forgotten that I wanted to raise that and get it moving. So, Claire.
Yes, actually, I just want to say I'd seen that. It's the first time I've seen that come on a list for topic discussions, as it is something that doesn't necessarily come to the table. But if we're going to do it, can I ask that it's actually broadened, and it's not just menopause, but we also talk about women that have endometriosis and how they suffer in the workplace as well, please. And I say that speaking from my heart, because I had endometriosis for many years, and it's not easy.
And people don't understand, because we don't talk about women's bodies, because men-dominated medical professions for so long, I think, is a shorthand without getting very feminist about everything.
But we talk about periods, and that's it, full stop.
That's it. We just do the school GCSE science, female biology, and there is so much more complex going on in women's bodies. It is absolutely mind-boggling, and nobody should be dismissed for being in pain and not being able to work just as having women's problems. So I think that let's start having those conversations in the right way and in the right spaces, so that we can.
Anyway, I saw Rebecca nod ahead and write something down, so thank you.
She's got it. We've got it. Okay, so I think then we've given Rebecca some homework to do, and I think sort of generally there's a conversation we could have that is potentially quite timely around apprenticeships and the value of apprenticeships, and those programs, especially given the success that we've had internally recently, but linking that into how we reward and recognise our staff, support their well-being at a high level, perhaps report back to us on any work that's come out of the chat about women's health, Rebecca, as part of that topic. And then we can tie everything together, looking at how we support our workforce from the in to the out, from start to finish, and how we keep and retain staff and make them feel valued and supported, because nobody goes into local government at any level because they want to make money. But in order to live and pay your bills, especially with the cost of living crisis, you have to make money. So it's all going to be about, what I'm wanting to see is, what are we doing to make people feel valued and support them through a really difficult period of time, and encouraging them to stay with us, so that we're not losing that valuable staff resource to other places, whether it's the private sector or other neighbouring local authorities, as we have in the past. So I think, yeah. Okay, right then, let me just double check. Here we go. Okay, so that is the end of the written agenda. I don't have an item of any other business on here, but I will ask, does anybody have any other business? Yes, Keith.
This is a point of information mainly for members. The Museum Service successfully applied to a scheme called Curating for Change, which is a national scheme, lottery funded, to employ disabled curators to help them get a step on the rung into curating. And it was originally aimed at deaf curators. Not one single deaf person applied, but we have had 3 applicants, one of whom was successful. She's neurodiverse. She will be starting on the 23rd of June. She's with us for, I think it's 40 days, but we're the smallest museum service to have been accepted onto the scheme. Most of them are much larger places like the Ashmolean in Oxford. So I think that this is down to Ros. She's done very, very well, but I think this is encouraging in that it shows our commitment to a diverse workforce.
I agree. I think that's brilliant. And if you haven't already done so, can you get in touch with Christine Crofts and get some comms out on it?
Yeah, we will do once Freya's started.
That's fab. And on inclusion as well, obviously, February is LGBT History Month. June is Pride Month because it coincides with the anniversary of the Stonewall riots and the start of the civil rights movement, etc., etc., etc. Is the museum sort of doing bits and pieces to engage and to promote that?
We have a very, very small thing on our projector. I was actually going to ask, my husband wrote to the council yesterday complaining about the fact that the LGBT pride flag is not up. Can I have a steer on this? Should I put it up outside the town hall, or does Ukraine trump Pride Month?
So this is a difficult one because obviously we flew it for February because February is History Month. Pride Month is, how many articles have I written on how important Pride is at various points in different spaces? But I'm sort of almost torn to have the flag up for all of June. What I would say perhaps for the museum and a curator's perspective is do what you think is right.
Right. Thank you.
Because I think we should be celebrating inclusion and diversity. I don't necessarily want to fly the flag all year round because that will irritate some people. But do what you think is right and what is appropriate, whether it's just coinciding with London Pride or Hearts Pride, or if you want to do it for the entire month. I'm going to direct that the council flagpole keeps the Ukraine flag up, though, especially with the way that things are going potentially at the moment. But yeah, and then I guess as well internally at the council, I'm assuming that we will be sending around some sort of internal comms about the importance of Pride events in June, and signposting people where they can get support and engaging with Stonewall, things like Rainbow Laces project in sport as well.
I'll put something together. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Keith. Thanks, Rebecca. Claire, did you just wave?
I say, I mean, in Hitchin there is the second flagpole. Could we not put it up in the square rather than on the council building? Sorry?
That's a question for Tom Hardy because it's the bid that owns Keith's flagpole.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I just wondered whether or not maybe that's perhaps, I don't know whether they put the flag up, that have a flag to put up there, but maybe if we're still flying Ukraine on other council buildings, maybe the flagpole in the market square, if we talk to Tom and maybe Keith himself of what he has. I don't really get to say on what goes up his flagpole.
I'll leave that with you, Keith, if you want to sort of do some Hitchin flag conversations.
I will.
Lovely. All right. So does anybody else have any other business for here? Okay, great. In that case, I think that we're done and we can bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much for your participation and engagement is really appreciated, and look forward to seeing what happens next. Take care, guys.
Thank you.